everyone, welcome to the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Rendazzo, and welcome to my continued New York Film Festival 62 coverage. As I said in the last video, it was a very hectic October for me between the election and the World Series and spooky season watching and festival watching, both here and in Minnesota, where I also went on the other end of the spectrum, not just as a reviewer for movies, but as a star in a movie. So I have had a lot to do in October. So I'm here now in November to catch up on all the movies I saw last month at New York Film Festival, including one that I am just so excited and just so energized and hyped to be talking about here with you guys, which is Pavements. Now, this is a movie I knew very little about going in. I'd known the director's name, Alex Ross Perry. He directed a movie called Her Smell, which I haven't seen, but I've heard great things about. I looked at the cast of this thing. It has a lot of familiar names that I love, like Jason Schwartzman, Tim Heidecker, Joe Keery, Nat Wolff, Griffin Newman, Griffey Nooms himself, Downtown Griffey Nooms, Logan Miller, Fred Hetchinger. So I was very excited. I saw this cast. I was like, great. I don't know much about the band Pavement, but this will be a cool little biopic, or is it a documentary? Wait a sec. Is it a documentary or is it a biopic? And that was my big question going in. And when I tell you the answer, Pavements is just such a fun film because it is a million different films rolled into one. It's just one of those amazing Frankenstein monsters of a film where everything doesn't feel like it should fit together, but you just surge the right electricity through it, which is Alex Ross Perry's voice. And you get something that is so unique. Like, I literally think this is going to be the end of the stereotypical Hollywood music biopic as we know it. Enjoy it, James Mangold, while it lasts in December when A Complete Unknown comes out. But I really do think a movie like Pavements, if enough people see it, could kind of defy the way we look at music biopics today in a good way. Like, I feel like we've seen a lot of movies that are good, but they fit very similar genre conventions, similar biopic beats that they hit. It's all, kind of shot in a similar way. The way the music and the backstory and the exposition is carried through, it's all very formulaic in a way, which can be comforting. There is a comfort to a formula. I mean, it's why we love slasher films, because they kind of go through the same beats. And then when it reinvents itself, it's jarring at first, but we love it. And I feel like that's what it is like watching Pavements for the first time, because this is a band, Pavement, that I knew very little about. Actually, I'll admit I hadn't heard a single song from Pavement. Maybe I have just in passing, but this was a band I didn't know anything about. So I was very excited to just watch a movie that would introduce me to a new band. But what this movie does is it doesn't just introduce you to a new band and tell you who they are and what they stand for, but the way it is edited and the way that it is presented and the dark humor and the way it juggles so many things in a very silly manner, but manages to have it all come together in the end, is very much the embodiment of what Pavement does stand for as a group.
They wanted something that sort of suited their spirit of who they were, which was many different things: playful, intelligent, snarky, funny, stupid.
This film does feel like it is, in essence, like this kind of vicarious personification of the band itself in a way that I feel like a lot of music biopics today aren't. You look at a movie like Ray and a movie like Walk the Line and a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody. Those are three very, very different artists: Ray Charles, Johnny Cash, and Freddie Mercury. Yet all their movies kind of hit the same beats, have the same style and the same tone to them. And I'm not trying to be like too harsh on those movies, because some of those movies I really like, but there is also something to be said about the fact that a lot of movies feel the same for people who are very different. The only one that I can think of is like really different is like Rocket Man, because that was an actual like song and dance musical that they used to kind of tell the story of Elton John's life. And there's a reason I love Rocket Man more than a lot of the other films I just mentioned, because a lot of the films I mentioned kind of hit these conventional beats time after time after time, to where I think people are getting a little bit sick of it. So you enter Pavements, enter Alex Ross Perry, who wants to just turn this whole concept in on its head. So what is Pavements, you're wondering? Is it a biopic? Is it a documentary, Dylan? You still haven't answered the question. Well, I'll tell you right now, it's both. It is a documentary about the band Pavement. It is a kind of behind the scenes documentary about them getting ready for this revival concert tour that they're doing together after spending a few years apart. So it is that. It is a documentary. It is also a biopic, but it is not a standard biopic. It is a standard biopic, but it is a parody satirical biopic, basically satirizing the new formula method of biopic. So it's a very purposely campy and cheesy biopic where all the actors' deliveries are very serious and somehow everything works out so conveniently. And the way it's shot, he's basically crafting a stereotypical movie musical biopic about Pavement in a cheeky manner. So that's film number 2. Then film number 3 is a behind the scenes making of that biopic. So you have Joe Keery kind of getting into the process of playing the lead singer of Pavement and also his kind of rehearsal process. But it is very clearly Joe Keery acting as himself, acting as this character. So you kind of get this like fake behind the scenes biopic documentary in a similar way to like Spinal Tap, where it's very clearly satirical, but it's supposed to be as if you're watching these actors prepare for their roles. And you get a lot of great stuff also from the other side characters like Nat Wolff and Griffin Newman. So that's film number 3. Then film number 4 is essentially this like art exhibit about Pavement. It's like a museum exhibit where like you just see a lot of their old memorabilia, and it's basically like a news story as if you just like went to this exhibit and you were covering this museum piece of Pavement. You know, it's all these people just kind of like looking around at all this cool Pavement memorabilia. The band is there. There are cover bands literally playing their songs there at the museum. So it is also a museum exhibition. So that's like what, 4 films now, right? You got the documentary, you got the biopic, you got the making of the biopic, and then you've got the museum exhibition. And then there's a 5th film in there, and it's not really a film more so than it is a pro shot of an off-Broadway show using the music of the band Pavement. Now, it's not an off-Broadway musical about Pavement. It is a off-Broadway musical with a totally different story using the music of Pavement. Similarly to how, like, you know, American Idiot was not about the band Green Day, but it used the music from the American Idiot album and other Green Day music to tell that story. So you're getting 5 films rolled into one. So what I love about this film is that it doesn't, like I said, become an anthology of like, okay, now we're going to look at the biopic. Now we're going to look at the documentary. Now we're going to look at the off-Broadway show. No, instead it seamlessly ties everything together all at once. And I'm not just talking about like clip, then clip, then clip, then clip. Sometimes they're playing simultaneously. So sometimes you'll have them showing the off-Broadway production. Oh, there's a 6th film. There's a making of the off-Broadway production and the casting of it. So there are essentially 6 films in this thing, but you'll have the actual off-Broadway production happening. Then in this corner of the screen, you'll have the fake biopic happening. And then down here, you'll have the actual band Pavement and the documentary about their revival tour. And then it'll cut to the exhibition. And then when we're in the exhibition, it'll show footage of Joe Keery preparing to play the lead singer in Pavement in this fake biopic. And then in the bottom right corner, you'll have the behind the scenes audition process of the off-Broadway musical. Like, what I love so much about this film is that it decides it doesn't want to be one thing, and it wants to be all these things. But instead of just being all these things and making a mess of it, it has a seamless cohesion to where everything that's happening side by side may be different in its actual medium. You know, an off-Broadway musical right here with a musical biopic, with a documentary up here, with a museum exhibition right here. But all 4 things are basically tapping into the same thing all at once. It is really fascinating. And it's a film that I've never seen anything like. You know, I've just never seen a film that has tackled so much at such a seamless level. You know, usually if you're trying to tackle all these things, it becomes a little messy. It becomes a little cluttered. It feels like, maybe we didn't need that part, or maybe we didn't need that part. Here, it all makes sense. And I think it's because Pavement itself as a band is very cheeky. It plays with the form. It plays with the rebellious nature of breaking the conventions of the art it's doing. So I think to have a documentary or a biopic or a film, I'll just say a film because it's so many different things. It's a musical itself. But to have all these different things, to have a film that tackles so many different things and does it in a cheeky manner, but still has something interesting to say beyond just being a fun experiment, that is exactly what the band stands for. And I love how Alex Ross Perry has found a movie that perfectly encapsulates the spirit of this artist. You know, it's not just Alex Ross Perry being like, what can I do that's different for me? It's more so, what can I do that's different because this band is different? And I want to convey that. I want to show that. I want this band to feel well represented by the zaniness, by the uniqueness, by the singularity of its vision, in the fact that it's not singular, and the fact that there's so many different things going on. So
what if we just made this movie that was like an explosion of 4 or 5 kinds of movies you would get with this? This band is so important that they get 5 movies instead of 1 movie. And then what if all 5 of those movies are squeezed into 1 movie? It just felt like a challenge I'd never seen before.
I found this to be one of the coolest experiments of the year. Now, are there moments that I felt like I wasn't as connected to because I'm not a Pavement fan? Yes, like a lot of the stuff about them like recalling their memories and going back to write these songs, I didn't necessarily have that personal connection to where, like, when Elton John is coming up with the lyrics to your song, I'm weeping because I'm like, wow, I love that song. And now it has so much meaning. But if you are a Pavement fan, especially, I mean, my screening was packed with Pavement fans. It was a really fun time in New York Film Festival because you had half the audience as like this highbrow critic excited for the art form, moviegoers, and then you had the other half, which was just hardcore Pavement fans. But I feel like the hardcore Pavement fans could appreciate the bold risks from a filmmaking perspective, and the film fans could appreciate the unique vision and the embracing of this oddball Pavement mindset that the Pavement fans have tapped into and loved for so long. So I thought it was just such a great marriage of all these different thoughts, all these different ideas. I've never seen an Alex Ross Perry movie until now, but I feel like this was the perfect one to start with because it feels like, you're getting a real idea for who this guy is as a filmmaker, the way he wants to push things beyond the boundaries, the way he wants to break down the boundaries, the way he wants to kind of just open it up and make it so that, a movie biopic doesn't need to hit a certain convention every time it's done. Because if we start to hit the same conventions time after time after time, it becomes stale. It already has become stale. And I feel like Pavements is the type of movie that will hopefully break the door open and allow for so many different interpretations to be made. And now I'm going through my mind thinking of all the great musical artists that I feel like this treatment could be given to, the idea that these artists do not belong in this one conventional bubble. And I feel like there's so many artists, especially artists that are like coming up now, big artists that have big, bold styles, Lady Gaga, Chappell Roan, all these amazing artists, but also just artists of the 80s and 90s, like all these great bands, these great punk bands, all these great bands that deserve, a unique telling of their story. And not every movie needs a story. And I don't even think Pavement needed a story, but it was justified in the way it was told, which is so, so important.
When you're younger, you have a little more like, think you're the hottest shit, maybe. Even if you don't say it, you're modest in the interviews and stuff.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this movie. I love this movie. I love what this is going to do, hopefully, for that genre. I love the performances. I think Joe Keery is genuinely great here because he has to play a heightened, fictionalized version of himself playing a role in a movie. So it's kind of like this double, like, Joe Keeryception thing going on, where you've got, like, Joe Keery, the actor, playing Joe Keery, the actor playing the role in the Pavement movie, then putting on this fake kind of heightened biopic persona.
Nah, I don't want to do that.
And I think honestly, in each different scene, you can find little nuances in his performance. I think everyone's performances are great. Even the band itself, they have a lot of great energy. I mean, in the Q&A itself, they had such great, personality and flair to them as well. I just think this is a very fascinating film, and not everyone's going to love it. As I said, if you're not a Pavement fan, it might take you a little bit of time to get into some of it because you don't have that instant recognition of like, oh, I know that song. Oh, okay. It's Crocodile Rock. You don't have that in the way you do with like something like I talked about recently with like Elton John, Never Too Late, where every single song they're going to play. Here, it might be a little bit more niche, but I think honestly, at this point in my life, I know who I love, and I'd rather kind of expand my horizons. I'd rather discover new bands rather than just relishing in the things I love and the things that are recognizable to me. Because to be honest, if I just want to listen to songs I know and artists I love, I'll just play their records. Here with Pavements, this is a way for me to tap into their psyche as a band to then want to go back and listen to their records and kind of just absorb myself in all their music. So I think this is going to be satisfying for everyone, just Pavement fans, non-Pavement fans, and I think those non-Pavement fans are going to become Pavement fans from this, at the very least, fans of this film and fans of Alex Ross Perry's work. But this is a really, really confident, really bold, stylistic, fun, well-edited film. I mean, the way everything is shot and the way everything is kind of like existing all at once, it is really miraculous. It's one of those movies that should be a complete mess in premise, but ends up being so successful. And I think if you were to take away one single element, it wouldn't all fully come together. Like what the off-Broadway musical adds versus what the biopic adds versus what the documentary adds, I think they all add something very unique and interesting that I feel like on their own would have been fine. But I feel like because you have all of them existing all at once, it is just a treat through and through. So this is in contention for my best of the fest. I love this movie. I really recommend this movie. I don't know where it's going to end up. I think it might be Mubi. Don't quote me on that. But wherever you can get it, whenever you can get it, see it, seek it out. I think this is going to be a real treat, especially if you're already a fan of Pavement or Alex Ross Perry, or Joe Keery, or Griffey Nooms or Nat Wolff, like all these different actors that are just so fun to watch. I could have watched 6 more hours of it. I really could have. I wish I had been able to actually see that off-Broadway staging, just because I just feel like this is just such a clever idea. You literally conceive and put on a production of an off-Broadway musical to use as B-roll for a 7th of your film. Like, that's just genius to me. That's just stuff that, like, no director out there, but, like, very few could, like, even conceive. And I think that's why Alex Ross Perry is one to watch. He's already been one to watch, but now having actually seen one of his films, like, I think he's the one to watch. But there you go. If you've seen Pavements, if you're excited to see Pavements, if you didn't know what Pavements is and now you're excited to see it, let me know in the comments down below all those thoughts. And if you are a Pavement fan and you have seen the movie, I'd love to hear from you, especially to hear what your thoughts were on this movie. And I cannot wait for everyone to see it. But that is all for me right now. We're going to get into the crux of it soon with many more New York Film Fest 62 coverage reviews to go. But thank you for watching this one for Pavements. Otherwise, I'm Dylan. Stay cool, stay fun, stay fresh, stay inspirational, stay original, and I will see you next time. Thanks, guys.